Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from anthonymorganti.com, and this is episode 32 of Learn Lightroom 5. And in this episode, we're going to process a group of images in Lightroom, and then we're going to send them over into Photomatix Pro 5.0, and we're going to create an HDR image. Now, you guys probably remember in previous episodes of Learn Lightroom 5, I did something similar with Photoshop, and this is the HDR image we created in Photoshop, and I did a Nik HDR Effects Pro 2.0, I believe it was, and I created this HDR image in Nik Software's program. Now today we're going to use Photomatix Pro 5.0, as I mentioned. Probably, in my opinion, the most popular HDR software out there. And most of the pros that I know that shoot HDR use Photomatix. Now I gotta admit, I barely shoot any HDR, but I've kind of resolved that I'm going to increase my shooting of HDR in the coming year. In my portfolio, I don't have one HDR image in it, but I'm going to do it. There's a lot of scenes that I want to retake around where I live in HDR. So hopefully these series of videos, 3 videos, will help you choose which HDR software you'd like to use or which works for you. And I think I'm going to use Photomatix. I really do like it. And I think it gives it's the most powerful, I think, and gives you the most ability to change and affect your image. So, without further ado, let's start. We got this the same group of 5 images that we used before that we converted into HDR. And if you remember, this was the properly exposed image, at least as far as my camera's meter was concerned. And then I took one that was 1 stop overexposed, another one that was 2 stops overexposed, and conversely we did 1 stop under and 2 stops underexposed. So what we're going to do here is the same thing that we did in the previous videos. I'm going to do some minimal Lightroom processing. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump right into the detail panel, and I'm going to sharpen the image. And the reason why, I've noticed with Photomatix, at times it seems to blur the image a little bit. So I'm going to sharpen it, and I'm not really too concerned about noise right now or anything like that. I'm just going to crank the sharpening pretty high. 86 is fine. I'm not going to do any noise reduction. We're going to do the noise reduction when I import it into Photomatix, and I'll show you that in a minute. Next, we're going to go to lens corrections, and I'm going to enable profile corrections, and I'm going to remove chromatic aberration, even though I don't think there is any chromatic aberration. Okay, this one is done. That's all the processing I'm going to do. Now I have to do the exact same processing to the other 4 images. So all I have to do is hold the Shift key down. I already have the first image selected. Hold the Shift key down and click on the last image. Now they're all selected. And I'm going to click Sync over here. Now a dialog box pops up, and I already have it check marked. I'm going to fix sharpening, or I'm going to copy sharpening, and I'm going to copy the lens profile corrections and the chromatic aberration. And I'm going to click Synchronize. Now it just synchronized them all that fast, so they're all good to go. Next we're going to do is we're going to send them into Photomatix Pro 5.0. Now there's 2 different ways you could do it. You could right click on any of these selected images, and you could go Export Photomatix Pro, or you could go to File, Export with Preset, Photomatix Pro. Now what it will do, it comes up with this dialog box. Now I did take these images on a tripod, but I'm going to keep this checked because maybe my tripod moved. I really took these images so long ago I don't remember. So I'm going to align images, but I'm still going to check taken on a tripod. I guess that uses a different algorithm to make sure that they're perfectly aligned. I'm going to reduce noise, as we mentioned. That's why I didn't reduce noise over here in the detail panel. We're going to do it here, and I'm going to do, you have 3 choices here. You could do just the underexposed images, the normal exposed image, and the underexposed, or all of them. I'm going to do just the normal and the underexposed. The reason being is typically noise occurs in the dark parts of an image. So there's no need to do any noise reduction on the overexposed images. My normally exposed image in this case is still very dark back here, so I'm going to include that one. So I'm doing the normal exposure and the underexposed image, going to reduce noise. The disadvantage of doing this is it takes longer. It takes longer to export them into Photomatix because Photomatix is going to align everything. That takes a little time. Then it's going to reduce the noise. Of course, that takes a little time. Now I'm going to automatically re-import this into my Lightroom library, and I'm going to give it a unique file name called Photomatix. And that's it. And I'm going to click Export. All right, excuse me. Battling a cough, I apologize. Also, I gotta apologize that the Lightroom videos have been so far and few between. Also, my Photoshop training videos and my Elements training videos have been very sparse. And the reason for that is I've been buried with photo critiques to do. I've recently stopped accepting new images for critique, but I have a real backlog of images to do. I promise people I'm going to do their critique, and I'm going to do them. So I'm going to be doing critiques for a while, another month probably. But as I mentioned, I'm not taking any new ones in, and when those are done, they're done. And I really could do some other things now. I could really expand on my Lightroom training, Photoshop training, Elements training, and I have the equipment now where I'm going to come out from behind the camera or behind the computer I should say, and do hands-on photographic techniques where I'll show you guys how to do different things. I'll be out in the field doing a landscape, and you can see how I go about my thought processes to photograph a landscape, stuff like that. So I'm real excited to do that. Also, I'm going to be starting a mentoring program. So if you guys are interested in me mentoring you personally on your photography, look for that in the future. That'll be coming up. Okay, now Photomatix, when it imports the images and it did the noise reduction and the alignment, what it will do whatever your last settings were over here. It will default to those. So whatever you had these set at your previous photograph, that's what you'll get. There's also presets on the right where you could click on any of these and you'll get a preset like Painterly 2. I don't think I've used presets on my limited use of this program, but if you like presets, by all means use them. Typically though, if you're running Photomatix for the first time, it's going to be to the default, and this button right here will get you back to the default, especially if you have an image like this and it's all crazy. You could just click here and this will bring you back to your default sliders here. Okay, now before we get into the sliders, let me explain this little section up here. You have two different processes, tone mapping and exposure fusion. If you do a real true HDR image, you're going to be tone mapping. That's what everyone I know that uses Photomatix, they do tone mapping. And then the method is details enhancer. So if you want to do straight HDR, 100% of the time you're probably going to use tone mapping and details enhancer. There are two other choices under here. There's contrast optimizer, and you can see these sliders change, and there's tone compressor. Now I've never done those, so I can't really train you or show you how those work. This is to show you how to use HDR. Now one of the in my opinion, the best HDR photographer on the planet is Trey Ratcliffe, and he uses Photomatix pretty much exclusively, and I don't think he uses anything but details enhancer and tone mapping. Now exposure fusion is kind of like presets. You got these different presets you could use, and then of course you could slide the sliders. The sliders change to the presets. If you could experiment with these things and see what you come up with. But as I mentioned, if you're buying Photomatix, you want to do tone mapping. So you want tone mapping, details enhancer. Simple as that. And that will get you these over-the-top HDR images you see, or some real subtle HDR images. And that's why I like Photomatix, is it's got a real wide gamut of adjustments. So you could do HDR and people won't really know it's HDR with Photomatix, or you could do HDR and people are going to think that you were on acid when you took these shots, or they're on acid looking at the shots, because it could be that much over the top. So anyways, back to what we're doing here. We're going to use tone mapping, details enhancer. The sliders themselves, the strength slider is exactly what you think it implies. It's how strong each of these sliders will affect the image. I'm going to keep it at 100. I want to show you what all these sliders do, so I'm going to keep the strength at 100, and I'm going to process an over-the-top HDR image. It's not anything I'm going to be proud of. It's something to show you, though, how these sliders work. So the strength slider I'm going to put all the way to 100. If you had it all the way down, obviously it's just very weak. These sliders won't affect the image as much. Color saturation is exactly what it means. As you go up, you're going to get more saturated, even oversaturated. Yeah, but I'm going to, like I said, I want it to be really over the top HDR image, so I'm going to keep it pretty saturated. Tone compression is kind of like a contrast control in a way. That's the way I look at it, and I want like this wood grain to show through. So I'm going to be pulling the tone compression down a little bit. Now what I typically do now is I don't go and adjust these sliders yet. I jump down to the white point and the black point. And this is because of my Lightroom training. I'm used to doing white point and black point early in my workflow. And I carry that over into Photomatix. The reason being is I found that if I just adjust these, then I come down and start adjusting white point and black point, I come back and I have to readjust these. So I kind of like to jump to the chase. Jump to the chase? You know what I mean. So I'm going to adjust the black point first. I really want to see grain in here. Now if you could see as I move the cursor around the photograph, there's a square with a plus sign magnifier in the middle. Just click on that and you'll get a loop. One thing about the loop I noticed, though, it's not exactly what you're seeing here. They must use two different algorithms to process the image, the preview image, and to process the loop. So as you'll see as I come with the black point, as I turn it up, I don't know, the blonde part of the wood looks brighter than it does here, to me at least. Also, it's noisier than it is here. A little bit. So I'm not sure how much use the loop will be to you. Okay, so we're going to move this black point around. Like I mentioned, I want it kind of real graphic, and I'm going to move the white point around, like right around there for now. I could come back and readjust those, of course. I'm going to go back to tone compression. I'm going to bring that down a little more. And I'm going to go to detail contrast. I want a lot of contrast. As I mentioned, I want it really grungy. Now the lighting adjustments is the weirdest adjustment in Photomatix. You can see how it looks like I have a spotlight here and a spotlight here right now. If I move this slider around, it's like these spotlights move. You see what I mean? How they kind of move around. It kind of gets more surreal the further left I'm going. I kind of like this part lit up, so I'm kind of going there, but I don't kind of like that surreal look that much. But I do kind of want this part lit up, so I'm gonna leave that there for now. There is a checkbox here, and if you check that, the slider disappears and you get these buttons. And I don't think I'll ever use these. These sometimes do some really over-the-top weird effects as you press these. They're kind of preset buttons. So I kind of like the slider better. I could kind of move it more to my liking. Kind of, I guess, right there for now. I could come back, like I mentioned, and readjust that later. Alright, now we go to the More Options panel, and we have Smooth Highlights. Now this won't do as much in this shot. If you have a landscape and you have an expansive sky and you're seeing noise in the clouds, if you move this to the right, it tends to smooth out the noise. But what it will do, it tends to lose detail too. So as you can see, there's more detail down here, and as I move it to the right, kind of whites it out basically. So it's kind of one you got to move it around a little bit and find where you like it. Now the white point I'm going to come back and readjust a little bit. I think I had it a little too high. and it kind of tones down that glow that was there a little bit. Still have these spotlights I don't really care for, but I'm going to live with it for now. And the black point I could come back and retouch up and see where it goes. You could do these things like an eye test. You could go, is this better or is this better? And then you could kind of narrow it down. Is that better or is that better? Do you know what I mean? So you could click on either side of the slider and just move it left and right and keep narrowing it down. Gamma is kind of like a combination brightness contrast control all wrapped in one. If I move it to the right, it gets loses contrast and increased brightness. If I move it to the left, it increases contrast and decreases brightness. So I am going to just have it down a little bit. It was at 1.0, but I'm having it at 0.84 now. So I moved it down just a touch. Temperature is color temperature. As you move it to the right, it gets warmer. As you move it to the left, it gets cooler. I'm just gonna. You could reset the things just like you could do in Lightroom by double-clicking on the slider. It will reset it to 0. All right, now the next group of sliders is the advanced options. And the advanced options, again, now micro smoothing is just, again, if you really got some noise and you want to get rid of it, you could kind of move this and it will really, but you lose detail. As you could see in this wood grain here, as I move it to the left, let's say, you can see I got a lot more detail. Move it to the right, a lot less detail. Now I want a lot of detail. I want the detail to scream in this shot. It's just so grungy and disgusting, and I want people to feel, itchy when they look at this shot. Saturation highlights, again, this is for color in the highlight areas. You could turn this up and you'll increase colors. You can see here the color in this bright label gets more intense, less intense. Saturation shadow, same thing for the shadows. You could turn it up and you'll see it in here now. As I turn it down, turn it up. There's something around there. Don't want it really electric, glow. I want kind of toned down a little bit. And shadow smoothness. This again, if you have some noise, you can move this around. Again, you'll lose detail when you do that. And shadows clipping is kind of moving the whole histogram to the left. So as you move it over, you'll see that the black point moves. So you'll have this all in black. So that's if your shadows, were too bright, you could bring them down with that, basically. 360-degree image. That, to tell you the honest God truth, that is if you're using like a panoramic shot, and you can see the effect it does up in here. It's just nothing, it does around the edges. Nothing I want to use right now, so we're going to keep that off. Up over here, we have, of course, this is the scaling, so you could make it smaller on your screen, bigger on your screen. You could click this and it will fit it to your screen. You could also use these plus and minus magnifiers. Preview here is, you could see what you're doing. Selection mode's kind of interesting. You have different selection tools, polygonal lasso, magnetic lasso. I'm not going to actually use them here, but let's say that you processed an HDR image and you didn't like the sky, but you like the sky in one of your 5 images. You could use the polygonal lasso tool, let's say, or the magnetic lasso tool, and select the sky. Then you would go and it steps you through it, and you could actually replace the sky in your HDR image with one of the skies from your, in this case it was 5 images. If you had 3 images, 7, 9 images, whatever, you could replace the sky with one of your other images from one of your other images. I don't think I'll ever use that. I'd rather use Photoshop to do that and use masks, layer mask to do that. So that's something, if you don't have Photoshop, you might want to consider. If you really like, a certain part of the image that was one of the 5, in my case 5 images, you could substitute it using this selection mode tool. Okay, that's it for now, I think, on this. I'm not really super happy with it. I kind of wanted it grungier, but I could get that, I think, when I bring it over back into Lightroom. So I'm going to save and re-import by clicking that key there. And it tone maps the image. and it's going to put it in my Lightroom catalog when it's done. And there it is there. Now I'm going to close down Photomatix, and there it is right there. Remember, I named it Photomatix. Now, I'm not done yet. This is my HDR image that I did in Photoshop. This is the one, of course, I did in Nik, and this is the one so far in Photomatix. Now you see it's not as obnoxious as the other ones, but I'm going to make it somewhat more obnoxious. I'm going to turn contrast up, and I'm going to turn clarity up, and I'm going to bring out the shadows. Now we could see all this grunge in here, this disgusting mess, and makes you really look itchy. Now if we go back to this one, that one's a little more, I guess, evenly toned. This one is really like, surreal, like, someone's looking at it, it's going to think they're on acid looking at that one. And this one's the one from Photomatix. As you can see, the Photomatix, it does a nice job, and I really do like Photomatix better. I think it has a lot more latitude, where I could not, like, typically I'm not going to make an over-the-top HDR image. I plan on using it for certain landscapes where I have wide dynamic range, and I want to show more detail in the shadows and in the bright areas of the scene that my camera can't handle. So that's what I'm going to use HDR for, and I think Photomatix fits that bill for me. And most landscape photographers, HDR photographers I know, use Photomatix. And as I mentioned, I think Trey Ratcliffe's the best HDR photographer in the world, and he uses Photomatix, I'm pretty sure exclusively. If you check out his work, you go to stuckincustoms.com and you'll see his work. He also has some training videos and a book or two on HDR, and I'm sure he goes into way more detail than I did here. This is just, as I mentioned, an overview to show you how it might work, how you could export an image with Photomatix from Lightroom, and what you could do. So that's it. I hope that helps you decide if you're interested in HDR, which program to get. If you have Photoshop, you spent, now Photoshop CC is a subscription. If you could afford the subscription and you have Photoshop and you're happy with their HDR that's embedded in Photoshop, by all means, use that. If you like Nik's software suite, which is very reasonable because they were bought out by Google, I think it's less than $150, and you like Nik's products, and you like this kind of look for your HDR, but this kind of look, I should say, you could, it still has a wide gamut of things you could do with it. So this is just really an over-the-top HDR to show you at that time how the sliders and things work in Nik's software. And of course, this is Photomatix, which I think I'm going to be using. So that's it for episode 32. I really appreciate everyone who watches my videos. Thank you very much. Go over to my website, anthonymorganti.com. I have all kinds of photography stuff over there. And if you have time, I'd really appreciate it if you went to YouTube and subscribed to my YouTube channel. And that's it for now. I hope I could do more Lightroom videos in the future once I get a lot of these critiques out of the way. And if you guys are watching my Photoshop videos and my Elements videos, those two, I hope to do a lot more of those. And remember to look forward to the mentoring program in the future, and for other videos where I'm showing photographic techniques and I'm out in front of the camera instead of behind my computer. I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.